hate, in a place, we've all just gotten here, you're just seeing each other. I hate to be the guy who makes you be quiet, but that's my job, so I'm going to do it. Good afternoon, I'm Ken Krieg, class of 1983. I was going to start with the great class of 1983, but I always get in trouble for doing that. So thank you for being here. And we're celebrating our 35th reunion this weekend. And I'm up here as the president of your Alumni Association. And I'm going to be around all weekend. The Alumni Association plays a role as a liaison between all of us, graduates and members of the community, and the college to work to engage how the college and the alums can continue to grow through lives of leadership and service. So I'll be around all weekend, as well as staff, fantastic staff that we have here. Any ideas or things you want to know about it, please let me know. I'm very excited to welcome you all today to this panel, which is created by bringing in several alums selected as game changers during the current institutional campaign. Game changers, inspiring leaders to transform the world, which has been tremendously successful and has just about another year to go. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but congratulations to the staff and all of those who've worked on it up to this point. I'm going to introduce to you Wendy Raymond, the Vice President for Academic Affairs and Dean of the Faculty, and Professor of Biology at Davidson. Wendy will serve as moderator of today's panel. Wendy's the Chief Academic Officer for Davidson, and she leads the campus's 177 full-time faculty members and 9 associated administrative offices. Her core responsibilities are recruitment and support and evaluation of faculty members and administrative staff, collaboration with the faculty in developing and invigorating the curriculum, and management of the division's $35 million budget, all in order to provide outstanding experiences for Davidson students. A molecular biologist by training, Wendy has received several top teaching prizes, including Faculty Member of the Year at Williams and the Harvard Danforth Center Teaching Award. She and her husband, Dave Backus, an environmental studies professor at Davidson, are the proud parents of Caleb, a member of the Brown University class of 2019. And I just would personally like to know that in the last 2 years of spending more time back on campus, I've been pleased and really appreciated Wendy's view of Davidson as a non-Davidson grad who's brought in a fresh set of eyes to what we do here. So please help me and join me in welcoming Wendy Raymond to the stage.
Pleasure to be here and a pleasure to have you here with us. And you can see it's not just me coming to the stage, but our great panel of game changers. Ken, thanks for that wonderful introduction, and it's really a privilege today to moderate this conversation with these 3 game changers, Anthony Fox, Kathy Bray, and Lowell Bryan. Anthony is a 1993 graduate. He served as mayor of Charlotte and as secretary of transportation. In December, he became a managing partner of Related Infrastructure, which focuses on transportation opportunities and businesses. Anthony is a member of our board of trustees, and he has recently been named chair of the Davidson College Commission on Race and Slavery. Kathy graduated in 1985. Nobody's here. And for 15 years served as Associate Dean of Students here at Davidson. She retired from her position in student life to pursue a master's degree in counseling at UNC Charlotte. Upon her departure from Davidson, the annual Women's Leadership Conference was named in her honor, citing her leadership and lasting influence on campus. Lowell graduated from Davidson in 19 1968, our 50th year. He is the Director Emeritus of McKinsey & Company and President of the Touch Foundation, which we'll hear more about in a little while. Lowell has served on our Board of Trustees for over 20 years, and he has generously and continues to generously support Davidson Scholar athletes with the Bryan Scholars Program. Today I will ask questions in turn of our panelists, starting with Anthony, and I know that this is going to be a really interesting conversation with all of them. Anthony, you've had to answer hard questions at the local and national levels. How did Davidson help prepare you for those kinds of hard questions and challenging times?
I tell a story about, first of all, thank you very much for having this great conversation and to share the stage with these wonderful leaders from Davidson. It's fantastic. I had a course here at Davidson with Professor Brian Shaw, and I tell the story a lot because I was preparing a thesis, and he sat down with me as I was working on this thesis, and I had this wonderful idea to write a paper that more or less explained what I already thought. And he thought that wasn't a great idea. So he asked me to take the opposite viewpoint and write a paper exploring that. And that has been incredibly helpful to me in almost everything I've done, including public service, because that exercise really forced me to listen to another point of view, to try to recite that point of view and understand it as thoroughly as I understood my own. The other thing that I learned, because we had so many papers at Davidson, was that there are things that you confront, including paper writing, that won't get done unless you just get started. And I did learn the value in public service that sometimes you don't get a pat on the back for doing what's necessary, but if we don't get started, the good things never happen. And so I certainly learned how to be a starter.
Well, don't look at me, that's not my question. Great. Kathy Bray, I think you started a lot of things here at Davidson College. So to you, Kathy, when you think about your time as a Davidson student and then the Davidson students of today, what do you think remains the same and what has changed most drastically?
So I think one of the things that remains the same is that Davidson students go about the business of figuring out who they are with, I'm going to say with great intention. And that's really important work that needs to be done during the college years. I think that was the case when, those of us who are older were at Davidson, and I know it to be the case in more recent years. I think, one of the differences is for a lot of us who have some gray hair, when we came to Davidson, the one thing of interest that was accessible to us within a 10-mile radius was Ham&M's truck stop. And as a result of that, I don't know if it was a result of that, but I do know that we were pretty creative in the fun that we had. We knew how to make that happen for ourselves. And I think that's lost a little bit with the current generation. They have access to just about anything and everything, whether it's through their phone or their iPad or what have you. And I don't know what the correlation is, if there is one, but I think we were a little bit more creative. And I think we were a little bit more joyful on a daily basis, which ties into another difference, which is the students of Davidson today are incredible activists. And they I don't know, maybe they have us to be joyful about, given the current state of things in the world. And they take that really seriously. And I was really proud of them over the years, watching them literally put themselves on the line to advocate for immigration rights and Black lives, and the list goes on and on. So I applaud them for that.
Great, thank you. Lowell, your support of the Bryant Scholarship and Davidson Scholar Athletes is tremendous. Tell us why you are passionate about scholarship support for these Davidson students.
Well, a lot of the time, history of Davidson, I would have gone to an Ivy League school except for football scholarship, which virtually law anyway. But the realization of the kind of handcrafted education you get in a liberal arts school and still play Division I sports. There's a special kind of athlete, student athlete that's required. And we deliberately try to create a scholarship for people who are outstanding students and athletes to be role models so the whole person comes together. And we don't ever have enough athletic scholarships. It's one of our great needs in athletics, but if we wanted to do, we got a double hit that way. We've got people that we want here because they are future game changers. And in addition, they're actually are instant impact athletes, self athletic program. And it's been really a great joy being able to interact with these young people. Some of them now have been gone for, graduated for 12, 14 years. You can really see that they're learning. It's a great joy.
Anthony, this is a fractured time in our society and in many areas of the world. What leadership qualities do you think are most critical for our new graduates to bring into the world?
Well, I think it is a fractured time, and I think there's almost a quiet civil war occurring in this country as we debate our values and our place not only domestically but around the world. And I think the qualities that Davidson encourages are really needed right now. Inquiry, curiosity, the search for the truth, and a sense of obligation not only to oneself but to other people. I think we as alumni have a special obligation now. I think it's probably as much or more than most, to try to help a generation of young people come through the system and to channel their energies in a way that can make the most impact. And I've been talking to Carol and folks on campus about how to best do that, and we'll have more hopefully to say about that at some point. But I'll tell you a story that sort of maybe captures my vision. I was sitting in the East Room of the White House watching Arnie Duncan step down from his role as Secretary of Education. And to my left was Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Sean Donovan, and to his left was Sylvia Burwell, who was the Health and Human Services Secretary for a while. And as this ceremony was happening, Sean turned to me and whispered, I could not have thought that 3 people in my class at Harvard would be in this president's administration. Himself, Duncan, and Burwell. And I thought about it, translated in my brain this way: why not Davidson? And so that's maybe a mantra for those of us who've kind of been in public service or gone on to do various things, to maybe have that a bit as a challenge for our college to have that kind of impact on the world and have that kind of expectation of people. There's a long distance between myself and Dean Rusk, and I'll consider it a bit of a failure if we don't see more people rising up into the ranks of high appointed office.
So why not Davidson? That is a good question. Come back to that perhaps. Kathy, in the Game Changer article written about you, you said, quote, most of the students walking the hallowed grounds of Davidson today confront difficulties. How did that further inspire the way that you worked or communicated with our students?
Well, when I was in the East Office of Chambers, sharing the stage with somebody who can say they were in the East Office of the Chambers. That's really, I'm going to milk it.
I think I'm going to go home.
So to answer your question, my friend Tim Saintsing, who is sitting up there, Tim, he loves to say on most of his Facebook posts that reference Davidson, it says the greatest place on earth. I'm at Davidson, the greatest place on earth, and it makes me smile every time he says that because, well, I happen to believe it as well. And there are so many reasons why Davidson is so spectacular. And part of it is, the faculty. We have a faculty that is so committed to its craft. We have staff who are so devoted to the students, and we have alumni and friends of the college who are so generous and make things happen for the college and for the students. But I would say that we owe the greatest debt of gratitude to our students. As we think about why Davidson is so wonderful and how it got to be so wonderful, I think about the generosity of spirit that, for example, our trans students demonstrate. And they teach us what it means to be a humane institution, which is something we like to say about ourselves. And I think about, the students who, despite depression or anxiety or family trauma or racism, they get up every morning and they get done what needs to get done, which is remarkable, really, when you think about it. And we owe them a debt of gratitude because they teach us what it looks like to be resilient. When we think about our students who are the first ones in their family to go to college, what a great thing that is. What an exciting thing, but what a great thing that is for them. And, we owe them a debt of gratitude because they teach us, as a community, as an institution, what it means to be truly accessible. Not just that they are here, but they teach us what it means to make Davidson accessible, everything about the place. And so, life for our students in some ways is wonderful because they're here and they get to walk these hallowed grounds. But life doesn't stop, and they teach us a lot about what we need to know to make it a better place.
Lowell, can you tell us about the Touch Foundation and its mission? We are privileged that several Davidson students and graduates have gone on to participate in the organization's important work. It would be great to learn more from you.
Well, 2 words before I talk
Microphone.
about why I did Touch and relates to Davidson. I left Davidson with a service mission like many did, but I decided to do it backwards. I wanted to go out and make money and have the resources to actually make a difference in the world, as opposed to going straight to service. And I went to Harvard Business School, and I was able to do that. And then I got to about age 50, and I said, you're beginning to run out of runway. you actually, if you're going to pay back, you better start. And along came this project to start a medical college in Tanzania. And the predecessor organization was Touching Tanzania. And then I led the foundation of that. We got the medical school going. We now have trained 1,000 doctors and 3,000 other skilled healthcare workers. We'll probably save, every one of those will save 300 lives during their lifetime of service. We've expanded, we're now doing maternal health with Vodafone. And what it's been just a great impact experience and enriching. The priest who helped get it started originally always said, anyone who gives gets more back than they realize. They're the beneficiary of the giving. And I found that to be true. And we found it a great opportunity to actually connect with Davidson. Our chief medical officer is Dr. Steve Justice, class of 78. I don't know if he's in the room. And we have Davidson Impact Fellows nearly every year. It's been a great experience for both Touch and the college. And it really, and one of the nice things to me about Touch, there's no connectivity between Tanzania at all, other than an opportunity to have a positive impact. So it's been a terrific experience.
That's great. Thank you. Back to Anthony. Through your time as Mayor of Charlotte and your time serving in Washington, what most surprised you about public office and leadership?
I think the thing that surprised me the most was when you strip away the pain of not doing it backwards the way Lowell did. Waking up every morning and wondering whether somebody's beating you up over a decision you made, or all the good and all the bad in public service that comes with it. It's really a personal journey. And at the end of it, I can kind of look back over the 12 years I was on the Charlotte City Council, on mayor, and then in Washington, and I can discernibly see growth in who I am. And I think that was a bit of a surprise because you sort of jump into this thing thinking, you've got all these great ideas and the whole world's going to be great. Everyone's going to be wonderful. And hopefully some of that happens. But there's also an element of growth that occurs. And I think for me, I learned a lot about how to deal with people better. When I came out of law school, I'd hole up in my office. I would do my own research. I had an assistant, but it was a very transactional kind of experience. But when I started having to figure out how to get 6 people to support one thing or another, it became a real exercise in not only listening but trying to figure out how to find those points of common ground. And for me, that was more than just the decisions. It was about creating a level of connectivity of the people that maybe I had lost due to the failures of our legal educational system, which we can talk about later.
In hearing your answers, I'm reflecting on how wonderful it would be if we also had students filling in these chairs, because I really think your experiences would be so wonderful for students to hear as they're embarking on these kinds of journeys and reflecting on, you being able to reflect on what it was like for you, all 3 of you. It's really inspiring. Kathy, what was most rewarding during your time as Associate Dean of Students here in working with our students? You've already told us some of it, which is that you found them to be really inspirational.
Yes, that was a big part of it. I think it has to do with the Honor Council and the Honor Code. And I didn't advise the Honor Council that honor really belonged to Tom Shanley, the Dean of Students. But I was close enough to the Honor Council members and certainly worked with a number of students who ran afoul of the honor code. And so I have two things to say about that. How rewarding it was to be in proximity, to be able to go to work every day where something like honor is the cornerstone of life. And one is that in 15 years, I never once saw a member of the Honor Council show any kind of arrogance about their position. And instead, I saw the opposite. I saw these young men and women who took their job as members of the Honor Council so seriously, and they were in awe, and they held the position they had with respect, and maybe most importantly, they were filled with humility as they did the work that they did, which is kind of remarkable because it is, one of the most esteemed positions at Davidson College. But they understood the power that they held, and they took it really seriously. And they were very humane about it. And the other piece of the honor code at Davidson and the way it plays out that I want to mention is that there's a space for grace. In that, the majority of students who are sanctioned, they violate the honor code and receive a sanction, perhaps a suspension, the majority of them return to Davidson, and they return to Davidson as full-fledged members of the community. And I think that's something that we really need to protect, because it is a recognition that we humans are fallible and that we can learn from the mistakes that we make. And what a valuable experience to have when you're 19 years old. And an example of that, there's so many examples of that, but one example that comes to mind is there was a senior who 2 weeks before graduation was found responsible for an honor code violation, and he was suspended. And to his immense credit, he didn't want to do this. He came back. And he graduated. That's not the amazing part, though. What's amazing is, not amazing, but delightful and important, is that 2 years later, I got an email from him, and he said, hey, just wanted to touch base and let you know that I have just been elected chair of the Honor Council of my law school. Okay, I'm better now. But really, truly, that is what was among the many things that were rewarding about spending 15 years in the Dean of Students office. Those kinds of inspirations kept us going. It's a really moving story. Thank you. Lowell, you serve as chair of the trustee athletic committee. Thank you for that. It would be wonderful to hear about your aspirations for Davidson athletics.
Well, it's a great pleasure that I had to actually lead the search for a new athletic director, so had a lot of chance to rehearse this as we were telling the aspirations. And also among the committee, athletic committee trustees, and also inspiration from President Quillen. I think we all realize, and we're realizing all the time, that actually athletics is part of the central identity of Davidson. It's not a sideshow. But when you have 25% of the student body are athletes, it's got to be absolutely integral to the mission of the college. And we really have three big aspirations for athletics, and we're going to do everything we can to step it up without sacrificing anything. This is not about changing how the pie is divided, this is adding more pie. We really do want to do three real things. First is win in the Atlantic 10. We want to be competitive in every sport every year for a championship. That's our aspiration. We may not get there, but that's our aspiration. Second, we want to attract people to come to the college who are going to be game changers, really exceptional student athletes. And we actually find that we compete against Ivy League and Duke and UNC better in athletics than we do almost everywhere. And basically, the student body academically is complete parity with the rest of the student body. In fact, some of our best students are athletes. And third, we want to be good enough in some sports to actually enhance our reputation nationally. We've shown we can do it in basketball and baseball. We've begun to show it in some of our Olympic sports by individuals, but we've barely started. We think we can create a very, very special Division I athletic program. And we are, as Carol says, completely unique. We are the entire set of small liberal arts schools that plays high-impact Division I. And that was reaffirmed by the 10 different people we interviewed for the athletic director job. Now, we happen to have gotten a really, really wonderful person. Who's Chris Looney. He was a basketball player in 2006. He is remarkable interpersonally. He was charismatic. He was a Terry Annie Watson Fellow afterwards. He did work internationally with Watson Fellow so much that he attracted interest in the NBA, where he then helped first as an intern for the Spurs and then actually with the NBA itself. He led the whole international development program. He's a remarkably successful young man, and we were just blown away by his capability. Well, then we cross-checked him a few other Davidson people and said, well, wonderful guy. How did you get him away from the NBA is their question. Anyway, so we're very, very thrilled by where we stand and our ability to move forward in athletics within moving the entire college forward.
That's exciting. Just a little color commentary on that. Every year at commencement, we, of course, honor our students who get the highest academic honors, and those are the ones that have a straight 4.0 average. And this year we had two, and they were both student athletes. One was a golfer, and one was on the cross-country track and field team, both men. So that is one anecdote showing that your aspirations are being met by many of our students. Anthony, it's clear that you have a heart and mind for leadership and service, as we hope to develop in all of our Davidson students. How else do you see yourself helping to serve in the years ahead?
Well, that's an interesting question. The short answer is that the thing I loved about politics was that your name was always on a removable great part. And my name has been removed. So I think of myself now in sort of two different places. One is I'm only 47 years old, but I've actually learned a lot about our political system and how it works and how people can move forward. And so I really want to spend a lot of my time helping to cultivate another generation of leaders who come in not because they choose to serve a certain party, but because they want to serve a community, a state, a country, whatever it is. The other part of it, quite frankly, is intergenerationally. As I've been going through this public service stuff, and my suits had holes in them, and I'm not going to cry for myself because I had a great experience. But I look at my children, and I also think about what my responsibility is to them to give them the best launching pad for the future. And So I think I'm in the private sector for a while, trying to really help, set my family up much better than I was set up when I walked into the Davidson campus with my Nikes and my T-shirt and my athletic shorts, trying to use some of my college eligibility, which still is unused. So I think that's kind of where I am. And, obviously, I've lived 12 different lives already, so, you just never know. But I think for now, I really want to focus on those two things, and I kind of want to live vicariously through other people in public service for a little while.
I think you deserve that. That's good.
My wife agrees with me.
Kathy, you're planning on going into counseling. You're going to finish your master's in counseling this summer, which is great. Tell us what appeals to you about that kind of work.
So, in the 15 years that I was in the Dean of Students office, I loved my job. I really felt like it was the best job in the world. I loved it. But I got tired. There's a taxing element to that work in a good way. And I could feel that I was going to get tired and that it was probably time for me to make a change. And so when I thought about the aspects of the job that I loved the most, it was, really working with students who were doing the hard job, the hard work of becoming, of figuring out who they were and why they were the way they were and who they wanted to be, and also working with students who had maybe hit a rough patch of one kind or another. That really felt like a privilege to me, and when they let me in on that journey, it was really wonderful. And so when I thought about, well, what most closely resembles that, and I think it's counseling. And I'm getting close to the end of my master's program. I finish up this August, and I think I was right. I think I'm going to like it. But I really miss the Davidson students.
That's good that you miss them.
I miss you too.
Lowell, in your Game Changer interview, you said, "My hope is that Davidson leads the way in reinventing liberal arts for the 21st century." How do you think that's going?
Well, I think it's going terrifically well. I can personally say that when I was here, we were really good at the liberal arts. And, well, this generation has some tough times. 68 was a pretty tough year. Started with Martin Luther King assassination, Robert F. Kennedy assassination, Tet Offensive, et cetera, et cetera. That was the environment that we got into. Yet we were grounded. In fact, most of us went to Vietnam. We faced it. But what grounded us was that liberal arts education, I think. And I think you need a liberal arts education to help navigate the challenges of the world. However, the world's changing. Doesn't say. You still need critical thinking. You still need analytics. You still need people right. All those are critical skills. But you also, at Davidson, get the unique ethical foundation as well. You continually in life, and I would say even more and now in an era of fake news, you have the challenge of always trying to do the right thing. And I think Davidson's continuing to navigate. Meanwhile, we're adding a whole set of 21st century skills related to math, computer science, digital skills, the ability to be entrepreneurs, the whole career, to impact career, how to get from the campus to actual careers through internships and research projects, all sorts of different ways to get Davidson into the flow that was different than our era. So I think we're well along the way to reimagine, because given the cost of Davidson and opportunity cost and money, the individual has every right to expect that they're going to have a sustained career for life in a world where you cannot take a straight path. You have to continue to grow and learn new skills. If you look at our days, most of them have not done one linear thing. They've had 9 jobs already. You continue to evolve. And that is, in fact, what I think is even more important in the 21st century. In 1968, you get a law degree and you have a pretty good path. It's a little more complicated in many ways today. And so I think we're doing a great job of getting us to evolve so we'll be able to make that all happen.
Yes, please jump on that.
One thing to what Lowell just said, because it struck me listening to you both on this answer and on the athletic department answer, that I think one big challenge our college has is that we're too humble. By that what I mean is, I think the world is desperately in need of what this institution delivers in terms of result. But I grew up in an era around this campus where people like Davidson was the best kept secret. Well, we can't afford to be the best kept secret anymore. We have to be in the arena in athletics. We need to be in the arena in virtually every other place. And I think we need to be not necessarily boastful about it, but confident about what it is we're producing and where it belongs in the world.
Now I have a last question that I'll pose to all of you together. No, it's not a surprise, I don't think. I think it's easy, even if it is a surprise. What lesson or lessons from your years as a Davidson student is or are most present in your lives today? What lesson or lessons as a Davidson student? Anthony's not going to be first this
Surprise
time.
question.
Oh, okay. Oh.
They were all surprise questions.
I think the value set, the honor code, the doing the right thing, the more turbulent the world gets, the more of the steady state is doing the right thing is more important than ever. That the world needs more leaders. And I just keep coming back and back to, there's a book that I read once that described why the Roman Empire was so successful in a decentralized way. And it had basically said, well, the reason was the Roman general, when they left Rome, only knew how to behave one way. They had to be a Roman general. I think when people leave Davidson, they only knew how to do things one way, the right way. I think that's what still is in the core of how I live my existence today in this frankly messy world.
Thank you. So my senior year was the year that John Kirkendall, also known as God, John Kirkendall became president, and he introduced many of us to a term that was servant leader. And yes, he's my head's nodding. And that theme has carried throughout, I think, if not generations, then the decades at Davidson. And it's echoed in what Carol Quillen says about Davidson today, where she talks about Davidson's disproportionate impact for good in the world. Same kind of thing. And, when I first heard about the Game Changer campaign, I was actually on the committee that looked at it. I had some hesitation, and I still have a hesitation, because as John Kirkendall says about alumni, they tend to be the go-to people in their communities, or in the country, or in the world. And I think that's my takeaway, is that we learned the values that you talked about, and that includes that we are, our brother's keeper. And we need to work for the common good.
Yeah, I needed some time. Thanks. Great answers, and I'll probably disappoint you all, but I think when I came to the Davidson campus in the fall of 1989, I'd grown up essentially in West Charlotte, the sort of center of the African American community. And I arrived in E.H. Little on the first floor. And I heard the Allman Brothers for the first time. And it started a musical exploration that continued for 4 years. I'd never been in a place that was just so different than where I'd grown up. And it started a question in my mind about how do we actually live together? And I think it's a present question right now. How do we take this tapestry of people who come from all different parts of the world and all different parts of the country and have different musics and tastes and cultures and everything, and be one? And that's what I tried to figure out a little while I was at Davidson. I've still, in my mind, continued to try to probe that question in a variety of ways. But I think that is probably the central question of our time. And frankly, it's been a central question of our time for a long time. But we don't have much more time to keep trying to figure this out. So for me, it's like the inquiry is a very practical thing. It's a very critical question as to am I going to toss my roommate because he's playing the Allman Brothers, or am I going to listen to it and engage with it? And I chose to listen to them and engage with them. And I wish that we could bottle a little bit of that in this country, because it would help us go from all this difference to more of the same.
So those answers here at the end, values-based aspects of the Davidson education, which I think define all of you as alumni, is something that I've been taught as a member of this community, is an aspect that you understand about one another when you come together. When you meet a Davidson alum, you understand that you share this set of values of humanity, of reaching across difference, of doing the right thing. And that is so powerful. How, a rhetorical question, how can we then translate that into building community across difference, which difference happens all the time. And yet we don't always see the result being community. So is that part of Davidson's efforts to reimagine the liberal arts, is to help our students lead Davidson for lives of leadership and service toward building community? And I'm going to take an opportunity to ask a question that truly is a new question. Are there other lessons that you would, if there were students in this audience, and I think there's some prospective students in this audience, you would say, from your college experience, this lesson could help me build on the values I gained or built upon at Davidson toward bridging difference, because bridging difference is really one of the challenges of the 21st century and of humankind all through the millennia.
Well, I think, and I'm talking about my class of '68, it was a really tough year. It was a tough decade. And then things don't go in straight lines. We could have gotten very pessimistic. There were people in our society talking about tearing society down, starting all over, the weather and all that. As bad as the societal issues are, whatever, however you talk, they're real. We had real racism, real, powerful, negative racism that was rampant around us in the South. So I choose to be optimistic that this is, to me, growing pains of a society where the movement and direction is irreversible and inevitable, which is an open, global, pluralistic, community society with better values. And yes, we're going to have all sorts of counter reactions, whether they're in this country or they're in Russia or China or the Middle East. But I choose to be optimistic. That's what a liberal arts education has told me in being in history. Over time, if you look on a fact base, we have fewer people in poverty in the world than we've ever had. We have real upward income throughout the world. We have real improvements in healthcare. So as hard as the challenge, we've got these tectonic plates and they create earthquakes. And we feel the earthquakes, but we shouldn't mistake that the world is going downhill. I don't think. I am an optimist that we are going to ever better humankind. And frankly, I'd like to see Davidson graduates helping lead the charge.
Anything else, Kathy? Anthony?
I see no reason why Davidson can't be at the forefront of that. I think given the resources that are here and the values of the institution and the students who come to this place, we absolutely, I share your optimism, by the way, but I think, Davidson can be at the forefront of that. And I think, we don't want to forget that, what Anthony described about his experience was seminal in your life. I mean, that was coming here and learning how to reach across difference is something that we have got to create here, continue creating here on this campus. That's the foundation of it. As people launch into the world, they have to have those experiences. And I can say this because I'm not an employee anymore. We have to protect the Davidson Trust. We as a community need to continue to invest in the Davidson Trust because that is what helps us to create those opportunities.
Yeah, it's a really tough question. I think if I were giving advice to Davidson students today about how to engage on this question, I would say reach back. The example I gave was one where I was through my own curiosity engaging across a line that I saw, a line of ignorance on my part. Y'all like the Allman Brothers. I'm trying to figure them out. But I'll give you an example. I was reading yesterday a piece about Jessica Chastain, and we probably already saw this, but she was on a movie with Octavia Spencer, who's been nominated twice for an Oscar and won once. And there's a lot of Me Too out in the environment, and she was talking to Octavia Spencer and found out Octavia Spencer was making a fraction of what she was making. And she stood up for Octavia Spencer, and because of that, they're now a parody for whatever this movie is. I have to go see it to support it now. But the point is that I think everybody can reach back. If someone reaches towards you, reach back, because that's where I think some of the fall off is in our society today, is that we don't realize how pervasive these lines are, and they actually can be broken down by us. And that's where I'm optimistic, is that I feel like with greater awareness and greater examples like that one, we'll see people reaching towards each other in a much, much better way. So, hopefully.
Thank you, all three of you, so much for sharing your perspectives, your wisdom, your life experience, anecdotes, and finally, this optimism that you've all expressed, not only about Davidson College and our students, but what we can possibly do in the world. Thank you all for being here today. Afterwards, if you'd like to stay, there is there'll be snacks out in the ground eatery and right outside here, and a gathering of academic departments and open houses. So feel free to stay and enjoy that. Thanks again for coming.
Davidson thinks they're in.